Hello everybody, welcome to Rainbow Use Case 1 webinar. In this recording, I will demonstrate the deployment of our use case applications using Rainbow Dashboard. In our use case, we have three services, which are Robot Motion Tracking Service, Personnel Location and Motion Capturing Service, and Collision Prediction and Avoidance Service. These services relies on Redis and RabbitMQ, which we will deploy using Rainbow 2. And finally, we will deploy one metric collector application, which will collect all the metrics generated by these services and forward them to Rainbow. So Rainbow can use these metrics for scaling and analytics purposes. We have Dockerized our use case applications, and you can find them in Virtual Origami in Docker Hub. To be able to connect to Rainbow Dashboard, first I need to forward my connection to the BIBA server that the Rainbow Dashboard is deployed. I use SSH for this. And now I can connect to the Rainbow Dashboard using the localhost of this device. We provide our username and password. And I'm in Rainbow Dashboard. We can see our resources already created. Now I need to create my components, the applications I want to deploy. So I go to the components page and I press create new. Let's start with creating Redis. My workers are using ARM architecture, so I need to choose ARM here. There is no elasticity for Redis. We can use the latest Redis. I want one CPU, 2 gigs of RAM, 10 gigabytes of storage, and we are using KVM. For health check, we can use Redis CLI, which is, let me check the Redis CLI command. For this, we need to provide a command that basically proves that the component is running. And we can execute this every 10 seconds. We don't need to provide any command for the execution and nothing for environment, but we need to expose the Redis interface, which is using port 6379. And we call this Redis interface. We give this an access type, and every transmission protocol can be used. It doesn't require any interface. And we don't have any additional options, so we don't need to provide any additional options. Therefore, we can save Redis. And we will do this step for all other applications. So for using RabbitMQ, we created a Dockerized image ourselves because we needed to configure RabbitMQ to be able to use IPv6. So we'll use virtual origami RabbitMQ instead of official RabbitMQ. So let's call this RabbitMQ, and again, ARM64, horizontal, virtual origami RabbitMQ. Our requirements are the same, KVM. For health check, we can use the web interface of RabbitMQ. And for that, we can connect to, or we can ping by pinging the web interface, which is using 15672. 15672. Or yeah. Actually using 15692 this is the web UI for RabbitMQ, and this is the web interface. So yeah, and we ping this every 10 seconds. We don't need to provide any environment variables, but we will expose two interfaces because I want to be able to connect to the web UI too. One will be RabbitMQ interface for normal connection, which is using 5672, which is we want to access RabbitMQ web interface 15672 access for all connections, and we can also expose our metric interface 2, metric interface, and again it's using 15692, not 72, for all connections. It doesn't require any interface itself, so we can save it now. So we now have components for Redis and RabbitMQ. Now we can start creating components for our applications. Let's start with collision avoidance. So collision avoidance. We are using ARM, and we want to use horizontal scaling. Here we want to use the stateless version of our image. Stateless. Again, we fill the requirements, I mean execution requirements. And our applications provide a simple web interface or simple web server that you can ping to check if it is running or not. In this case, we can use encat to ping it, and we need to use the name of our application. And the port, it is exposed in 9012. I want to ping it every 10 seconds. And our application relies on some environment variables to be set. In our case, we need to provide a RabbitMQ. And we want it to connect to the RabbitMQ we have deployed. So we use this value. I saved it already, so I need to go back and continue. So I can just edit and continue creating my component, or in this case, editing. We want to provide Redis. And we need to provide username and password for RabbitMQ. Username is admin. MQ password is rabbit. And our application expects a Redis password, which it doesn't have, so we will leave blank. And we need RabbitMQ and Redis interface to be able to use our application. We can call it the same name. Redis interface, save. And we don't need any plugins, volumes, so we save our application. I will be creating all the other applications, and I will show you the deployment after creating all the applications. Okay, now all our components are ready. While creating the other components, I remembered that I forgot to give the necessary environment variables for our RabbitMQ component. In this case, we have to provide the default user and default pass environment variables that we desire. In this case, we are using admin and Rabbit. Now we can create an application. To create it, we go to the application tab and press create new. We need to give our application a name. Let's call it an application. And we choose from the components we choose the components we want to deploy. And then we have to create the connections that our components need. So let me put RabbitMQ and Redis here. And now I can just use my mouse to connect the required connections with the interfaces. So our metric monitor will be connected to both of them. Robot motion tracking needs both of them. Personal localization service. And finally, collision prediction and avoidance service. Now we can see that all the connections are done, so we can create this application, save. And sometimes we need to refresh the page to see the application created. Here is our application. And to deploy our application, we just go to click these three dots and we create an instance. We give our instance a name, and here we can see the connections. and we can proceed. Here we can see it says waiting orchestration, and when it is done, the deployment, it will say deployed. However, I also check the deployment progress through our server. To do that, I use kubectl. First, we need to get the namespace of our instance. So here it is, the application and instance. I just save it in an environment variable, and then we can watch the pods. Okay, as we can see, some of them are deployed and some of them are running and some of them got some errors, but this is expected because they deploy out of order. So for our applications to run correctly, we need Redis and RabbitMQ to be ready first, but the orchestrator can deploy, let's say, collision avoidance before RabbitMQ is deployed completely. So it takes a couple restarts, but now we can see that all applications are running. And again, here in the instance page, it will turn to deployed here. Also, we can check our pods with more detail to see where they are deployed. And here our RabbitMQ, let's see if it is correctly working. So it is deployed on our worker 8. And I want to check its web interface. To do this, I need to again forward my connection to worker 8. To do this, I'm going to use SSH again. And instead, we want to forward our 15672 port to worker 8. 15672. Here we can also see the status change to deployed. And to check my queues, I'm going to connect to RabbitMQ. Here we have the interface, admin, Rabbit, and yeah, our applications are waiting for data to create the queues and start working. Now we know where our applications are deployed correctly. So this is how we deploy our use case 1 applications using Rainbow Dashboard. Thank you for watching.